see our panel in front of you. So I just wanted to welcome you to our first ever live question and answer. Woo! I think we're super excited to be doing this and to have an incredible panel in front of you. So before I get started, I just want to introduce myself. So I'm Gemma Hillier-Moses and I'm the founder of MOVE Charity. And I'm going to be your host for today. And I'm lucky enough to be sending your questions across to our expert panel for these guys to answer for you. So what we're lucky to be joined by our fabulous panel of experts who have a wealth of expertise and knowledge that they're going to be sharing with you guys today. What we just want to make you aware of is this is an informal discussion. So it's not done in our professional capacities. We will be giving our advice and knowledge around the different topic areas. But if you have any concerns about your health, please contact your usual healthcare professional about that, if that's okay. So is everyone ready? Thumbs up, guys. We're all ready to go.
We're good.
Good. So let's introduce you to our panel today. So first of all, Lucy, if you could give us a wave.
Hi.
So I want to introduce you to Dr. Lucy Gossage. So most of you will know Lucy. She's an oncologist consultant, a superwoman triathlete, and our very own 5K Your Way co-founder as well. So next up, Rebecca Robinson. Give us a wave, Rebecca. Fabulous. So Rebecca is a consultant in sport and exercise medicine. She's a very speedy middle distance runner with international honours to her name. So it's wonderful to have Rebecca as part of our panel. We have Tom Cowen. So Tom, give us a virtual high five. Virtual. So Tom is an exercise physiologist, a cancer rehab specialist. He's a Lululemon ambassador. Tom, I found that from your Instagram page. And he's previously a Chelsea FC sports scientist, which is pretty cool, that. So good credentials to your name there. And last but not least, Ainsley, if you give us a wave.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
So Ainsley is a health psychologist, lecturer and researcher at Derby University, but also our very own Conkers 5K Your Way group ambassador. So it's doing some amazing work there. Oh, actually, Rebecca's also our Sheffield 5K Your Way group ambassador as well. Missed that one out, Rebecca. So before we get going into the nitty-gritty stuff and why we put on this question and answer, I just want to ask you guys, it's a little bit of a fun question, but just wanted to ask you guys about what you have currently achieved or learned in lockdown so far. So it might be something about yourself, about your friends, about your family, but just give us a little insight into what you've learned or achieved in lockdown so far. So I don't mind who goes first.
Well, I guess my lockdown's a bit different because I'm going to the hospital. I did have some annual leave and I found it really hard. I realised I'm not very good at staying at home. I did plant some stuff in the garden, which would never have happened. I cleaned my car. But I think what's coming out is how well the NHS works together when stuff goes tits up. So that's probably my learning for the time being.
Brilliant. Tom, do you want to go next?
I'd love to say something productive like learn how to cook, but it's not true, unfortunately. So I think
you've learned how to grow a plant behind you.
I think that's my brother's doing, to be honest. I've got to give him credit for that one. I can't even take credit for that. No, I think being resourceful with exercise, to be honest. So working out at home, having no equipment has been a really good challenge. I think, being stuck in the house and having to make do with like using the bed as like a step up, as a chair or a bench or whatever, has been completely different to using the gym.
So keeping nice and fit and active.
Trying my best. Yeah.
Rebecca, do you want to go next?
I think, I'd agree with the other guys on some of this, probably being less productive in terms of some of the domestic stuff I could have been doing. But I think the biggest thing for me has been connecting with people. Like I've been doing some remote consults, but also kind of connecting with friends, family remotely when you can't see someone. I think that's probably, hoping that's something that we take forward out of this, is just how much we can connect if you can't actually see people face to face. But the value of that and keeping people going emotionally, supporting both ways has been a big deal, I think.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Really good. Ainsley?
Yeah, just slowing down a bit and just going with the flow. Like everything's cancelled. I've got a slightly freer diary than normal, so just embracing that a bit and spending time with my 2-year-old. So I'm playing a lot more, so that's a lot more fun. So just taking the positives where they are.
Yeah, that's definitely, I think a lot of people can agree with that. I guess from my point of view, one thing that I've learned is that in the early part of the lockdown, we launched a toilet roll challenge. And we did this, or Lucy launched it on social media. I learned that Lucy definitely had, and I think a lot of others learned, had too many toilet rolls in her house.
Yeah.
and that I was completely not prepared for lockdown at all, with two toilet rolls and 2 tins. And so I had to adapt very, very quickly. So I think, I definitely think that's something that I learned in the first 2 days of lockdown. So I hope you all like that one. So, well, now we've shared a little bit of fun around things. What we're going to talk about, so hope you've all got your views ready, because I definitely do. And that's one thing I'm definitely having a lot more of at the moment. But what we're going to talk about today is why movement matters. So why does movement matter when you're living with and beyond cancer, but especially during this current time? And actually, what top tips and advice can we give you to help you to move your way? So a lot of you have seen, we have an initiative called 5K Way. We've turned that into moving your way because of that current situation. So some of you will know that there's a lot of wealth of evidence around being physically active and how important that actually is for our mental and physical health when living with and beyond cancer. However, every single one of us are facing a completely new challenge with COVID-19. So whether that be from our work environment, our family environment, being in lockdown, but also to a lot of key services and groups that we usually use or are part of, actually being put on hold until further notice. So I guess that's one of the reasons why we wanted to bring this expert panel together, was to have kind of informal discussions, talk about some of those key areas, but hopefully to inspire and motivate you and show that, you know, there's a support network and a community around you that can help you in this period of time. So before I carry on chatting too much, I'm going to go straight into the questions. And first question is directed at Lucy. So Lucy, I mean, you've already done an article around this for The Guardian, but can you talk us through what we know and what we don't know COVID-19 situation for people affected by cancer?
So I think it's very fair to say that we know a lot less than we don't know. So obviously COVID-19's only been around since kind of end of December, January. We've only got small numbers, very, very small studies reporting on outcomes in cancer patients. So that makes it very difficult for anyone treating people with cancer. And it also makes it incredibly difficult for anyone living with or after cancer, because we're advising people as to how they need to live their life for the next however long, 12 weeks at the moment, based on very limited evidence. The evidence we do have, and again, this is really small studies, but it does suggest that people who are actively having most kinds of cancer treatment, so chemotherapy, immunotherapy, many of the targeted drugs, are at a higher risk of becoming more seriously unwell if they contract the coronavirus infection. But again, that's small studies. But that's why the government's told people who are currently having cancer treatment that they need to be very, very careful about isolating themselves and really cutting themselves off from any contact with anyone other than the people that they live with. And that, I think, throws up a whole level of dilemmas for people on treatment, because people who are on treatment have to come to hospital appointments. So on the one hand, they're being told they've got to stay at home, they can't see anyone. And on the other hand, they're being told they've got to come to treatment, to hospital to have their treatment. So that's enormously challenging. Most hospitals are banning visitors for obvious reasons to try and minimize spread of infections. But I think that's so hard for people having their cancer treatment in hospitals, going through it without the normal visitors that kind of make life more bearable. Like you said, the normal support networks are not going on at the moment, so there are virtual ones, but the normal places of support are reduced. And I think it's really hard as doctors, because we're trying to advise and counsel patients as to what the risks and the benefits of having treatment are, and those are based on not very good evidence. I think for patients, they're also having these discussions. So there's cancer brings up a whole level of uncertainty, and then coronavirus just throws that through the roof. So psychologically, take away the fact that we're all on lockdown, we're all isolating. People on treatment have another level of that, but they've also got the increased anxiety, which is really, really tough.
Yeah, and I think, myself, I went through treatment in 2012, and I actually spent the first 5 weeks of my treatment in complete isolation in a bone marrow unit that I was been treated in. So for me, thinking about people going through this at this point in time, like you said, Lucy, it is very, very, very difficult. And it's, you're not alone in terms of having to isolate, because a lot of people are, but that doesn't always make things easy in terms of going with friends. And like you said, nobody has experienced something like this in our lifetime. So even as doctors and consultants and healthcare professionals, it's something we're all having to adapt to very, very quickly, in terms of what we do, how we approach things, and how actually we support people living with and beyond cancer. So like you say, there's not all the answers right now. Everything's kind of evolving, isn't it, as we go along?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think another thing that's probably really hard for patients is that there are, things being written in the press about cancer services being cut off and potentially treatments being cancelled. And I think that, again, is probably increasing anxiety and raising lots of uncertainties. What I will say is that certainly all oncologists are doing their very best to keep as many treatments, and at the moment capacity is not it's not an issue, certainly not in Nottingham, but oncologists will always fight your corner, and whatever else is going on, our patients will always be at the front when we're trying to work out how we can get through this, but yeah, it's really tough.
Brilliant. I don't know whether you want Rebecca or Tom to add, and Ainsley to add anything to that, guys.
Yeah, I think it's important to distinguish between the physical distancing that you have to do and then social distancing. So it's about being creative and finding other ways to connect with people. So online, making sure that you're getting in contact with people and still getting that social support that we know is really important for people that are going through cancer, as well as their friends and family.
Yeah, definitely. And I think we've seen it from our 5K away community, haven't we? So we saw one of our groups celebrating their first birthday, and they all did pretty much like this, a Zoom, meet up, and with a cup of teas and their kids, and they were just chatting. And I that is wonderful. And yes, it's not physical, but it's fantastic to see people being creative and actually doing that. Which you say, the social connection is so important to keep us all going, really. So absolutely, yeah, absolutely fantastic. And I think, so kind of moving on from what Lucy was saying, and with us all having to adapt to the situation, I know how important it is to focus on what we can control, rather than constantly looking at things that we can't do and we are unable to do. And I think this is why I talk about physicality and movement and exercise. So I guess I just want to ask, is it important for people living with and beyond cancer to stay active, but even more so during this period of time?
I personally really think it is. I had some interesting academic debates over the start of this with academics. So, well, we never knew that exercise was that good anyway. And for me personally, this whole thing's really frustrating because I was on the cusp of trying to grow some more of the research. But from what we do know, it seems to be positive. I think, like you say, Gemma, it's one of the things we can control. It's one of the things that can make people feel better. And I guess with the actual cancer and all the things we don't know, keeping people fit. Okay, we could say that a number of weeks, we don't know if that's effective time for prehab, but we do know that it can keep things moving in terms of musculoskeletal health, in terms of cardiovascular health. Even the risks of somebody sitting around at home in terms of, for example, things like deep vein thrombosis that people might be at higher risk of if they have a cancer diagnosis, can just keep moving as well as all the kind of psychological aspects, I think it can only be a good thing. Obviously, there's limits to what people can do. It's not a time to maybe go to extremes with physical activity, but I think the more that we can do based on what we already know, the better.
Yeah, and I guess, like you say, what we talk about, I really like this hashtag where, I don't know if it's come from anyone else, so I apologise if it has, but movement matters, because movement really does matter. But movement means different things to different people. And I think, like we've said, it's all about moving your way, because everybody is at different stages of their life, different health status, different diagnosis, different goals and different needs. And so it's important to recognise that, but then to look at ways that you can focus on what you can do and put a smaller plan in place. So Tom, I don't know whether you want to add to that as well.
Sure, I agree completely with what Rebecca said. I think intensity is key at this time. So obviously we know that sort of moderate intensity exercise is beneficial for optimizing the immune system. It's important not to do too much, and equally important to not do too little. So I think obviously there's a temptation with being on lockdown that people could go completely inactive and do less and less. But we know that actually being sedentary is going to put you in a far worse position than if you're just to do something, you know, no matter what it is, just like a little bit of activity is better than nothing. And I think that's probably the key sort of take home message that ties in really well with the title, obviously, of Movement Matters, is just to do something of some degree. And I actually think, to be honest, a really good way, and I've had quite a lot of success with my patients in the last week or two of, you know, transitioning from seeing people usually face to face to now being over video call. And I don't think there's anything to stop anyone from doing that. So, you know, setting up a Zoom call like we've done now, but with your friends, and doing exercise interactively with others. So there's no reason that just because you can't meet physically in person that you can't create a little social group, you know, such as there are with 5K Your Way, keep that going and do it remotely over Zoom. You know, I think that works really, really well. So, you know, do a workout together where you're going through the same exercises, and, you know, make it fun, make it enjoyable, take it in turns to be like the DJ and pick a playlist, and, you know, someone prescribe the session and then the next person have a go the next time. And I think that's just what I would recommend, is try and keep the social aspect going as well as just doing any type of activity at home.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, please.
No, I was just going to say, I think Tom's point about normal movement for people who are self-isolating and shielding, so who aren't leaving their house to even go to the supermarket.
Yeah.
Obviously, the normal movement that we have just going about our daily lives, that's taken away. And for people who are in that situation, I think it's so important, just as Tom said, to make a positive effort to incorporate some movement every single day, even if you are stuck in your house. And nowadays there are loads of fun ways to do that. And yeah, I'm sure we'll talk about some of those.
So we've got Anna basically said, just looking at the Facebook feed, Anna Campbell, hello. She said, why don't you do comment on here? So maybe we need to do a big Zoom kind of activity session with Tom and his DJ list. So that's, yeah, we'll put that on the list. Yeah. My request would be, so I was highly motivated at the end of the week when I was putting together our 5K Away video with S Club 7 Reach for the Stars, I think it was, or Bring It All Back, one of those. So the tunes actually do keep the motivation there. So definitely something to think about when picking your songs, because it made me motivated for the rest of the week. So Tom, I'll put that on the list.
I won't be on mine anytime soon.
I guess it's important to accept, though, that it's very easy to feel low at the moment. And I know when I was on my annual leave, I feel a lot better now I'm back at work because I'm doing something. And it's very easy to feel low. And when you feel low and lethargic, the last thing you feel like doing is exercising. And I guess that's where the peer support model and having something in your diary where you're meeting up with other people makes it a lot easier to actually force yourself to get started. Because we all know that once you've got started, at the end of it, you'll feel a lot better. But that doesn't make it easy to take that plunge, does it?
No, and I think we'll go into this a little bit more around the psychological side of this, but in terms of having that routine and that structure is still important, or even more so important at this period of time. But also we all need to have the ability to adapt. but also having small short-term goals that you can focus on, that is really important to keep you motivated. And Ainslea is going to cover a lot more of those later on in the session. So I guess, Tom, I know you've probably already covered this slightly, but we want to talk about home exercise even more. So I guess what I want to ask you is, what are key messages about exercising at home? And you've already given us one handy tip around the Zoom call and getting involved with your friends. But what can people do exercise-wise from home? So some specifics around what you could potentially do.
Sure. So I think obviously you still want to try and maintain as much of your exercise routine that you normally do, in the normal world, as what we're doing in lockdown. So we're looking to incorporate a mixture of cardiovascular exercise or aerobic exercise and strength exercise as well. So typically people will have around their house just some light weights. With my patients at the minute, we're using whatever we can get our hands on. So that might be a couple of full water bottles, which is a kilo or so each. For those who want a bit more weight, then you could nip to Tesco and grab the big 5-litre bottles of water, for example, or just try and find something a little bit heavier. Sorry.
I've seen people using wine bottles.
A little bit more risky maybe with the glass, but just something anyway is a bit of an external weight. But to be honest, that's just that's an added extra, if you like, if you can get hold of that. There's no reason that you can't be doing body weight exercises. So things like squats, functional movements, squats, lunges, press ups or 3/4 press ups. You can adapt anything to the level that you need it at. So for someone who's just starting out with an exercise routine, look at, for example, an adaptation of the press up, like a 3/4 press up on your knees, or to alternately do it onto a raised surface. So you're placing your hands up high and you're doing a bit more of like an incline press up will make it easier if you're just sort of starting into it. Squats is something that people are doing day in, day out anyway, but it's just sort of structuring that. And if you want to add an extra weight to progress the exercise, and then obviously the lunge is a progression from that, where you move into single leg work. So, those 3 exercises, for example, you've got a push as an upper body exercise, and you've got a double leg and a single leg lower body exercise in there. All of those 3 don't need any equipment whatsoever, potentially just using body weight. But cardio wise, if you've got stairs in your house, going up and down those, walking for some people will be enough. Going up at a good speed at a jog will be enough for other people. The star jumps, there's burpees, there's a whole load of different conditioning exercises that you could do. So there's definitely enough variety, with the amount of exercise that you can do, even with body weight, to keep the workouts fun, interesting, and engaging for you and others to get involved in.
Definitely. And I think that's brilliant, and an insight into what you can do. And we're going to share after this live question answer some resources on our social media page from other organisations and other charities that are also doing some amazing work around what you can get involved in from a more specific cancer rehab perspective, which I think is also really important. As you say, Tom, you're a cancer rehab specialist, and this advice is crucial, rather than just joining in kind of any exercise thing that somebody's put out there on Facebook or social media. But I think people sometimes think, I don't have the space in my home, I might live in a flat, or I don't have a garden to be able to do anything. But actually, I've just watched today somebody doing a marathon up and down a 2-meter, basically up and back for 2 meters, which was live this afternoon. So if you can do a marathon in the space of 2 meters, like a bleep test, which, gosh, mentally that must be it's madness. But if you can do that, then you can pretty much do anything in a very, very small space. So I think, like you say, it's being a bit more creative and adaptive. But what about Oh, sorry.
I was just going to say, don't be put off. If you've got no equipment whatsoever, it really doesn't matter, because for me, for example, I've tried to get hold of some weights and an exercise bench and things for home, but everything's sold out at the moment. You'll find online, things have really, the demand is huge at the moment for home workout equipment. So don't be put off if you can't get hold of anything. There's a whole host of different exercises you could do just with body weight alone.
Yeah, and I've seen people using plant pots, so anything goes. There's a health and safety risk to that. But I was also going to ask about chair-based exercise. So some of our community will be ones that will be looking at more chair-based exercise, and what. So how can that work when you're at home, and how can you make that a bit more creative?
Sure. So yeah, obviously a chair-based. There are plenty of resources online for different chair-based exercises that will be completely appropriate and be good resources to look at. With chair-based, again, you can just use that as an adaptation from some of the exercises that I said earlier. So, for example, with the squat, that becomes more of a sit to stand, where you sit in the chair and you have a bit more of a rest in between repetitions, for example. If you've got light weights, you can be seated. You can be doing things like bicep curls and hammer curls sat down in the chair. And if you are looking at chair-based exercise, it might be slightly lighter weights that you're using.
Yeah, brilliant. And I think that's important. Like you say, a lot of exercises that people may see, like you're marching or like walking on the spot, that sort of thing, can absolutely be done sitting down and just moving those legs or moving your arms. So you can still get a fantastic workout from those chair-based exercises, which is awesome. So I'm just going to move on. We've covered that section, and we will be answering some more questions, but I just want to make sure we go through the ones that have been sent in. So Ainsley, I thought this question was quite appropriate for you. So one of our members of our community, Sue, has sent in a question around. So her question is, any tips for maintaining motivation? So she says she's struggling at the moment with fatigue and shielding. She has lots of kit that she can use at home, but currently isn't using it, and actually has nothing to train for in this period of time. So I guess, how can she help maintain or keep that motivation?
Yeah, so it's almost about getting started, isn't it? So I would say start about reflecting about why you want to be physically active and what it does for you. Is it to look after your health, or do you like the way it feels? And starting getting creative about thinking about what you want to be doing. Are there new exercises that you could try? Things like that. So is there any way that you can make it fun? But really be really flexible. So having some structure is good, but don't stick to it so rigidly that, if anything comes up or if anything gets in the way that you can't do it, that you end up beating yourself up. So yes, get started, but be really flexible with yourself. And it's important to start small. So I think we've said this already. Any amount is good. Any movement is really good. So that's a good way of getting started. And it gives you a starting point and somewhere to move on from. And I think it's all about being kind to yourself as well. We've got so many rules and restrictions in place at the moment that you need to give yourself some slack, basically, and think about what the rewards are about physical activity for you. So what's the thing that's going to really get you going and want to do another session or another activity? And what are the things that appeal to you? And that's going to be really, really personal to you. So although we're getting more connected on social media and we're looking at other people are doing, that might be great. Like somebody might be loving doing their 2-meter marathon, but that's not necessary for all of us. So whatever hooks us is going to be completely individual to you. So it's finding out about why you wanted to get started in the first place, and how you want that to feel. Are you looking to create a certain kind of like fitness or a skill in some area? And find your motivation for doing it in that way and what you want to achieve.
Yeah, and that's really helpful, Ainsley. And I think that, and I'll let anybody else add to this, but I do think in the last 7 days, so social media is great for this period of time, but it can also be a little bit of a problem. And there's definitely a sense of, when I go on it, of overwhelm, of every home exercise under the sun that you can see on social media is coming out. People, even people that aren't experts, and that, that does worry me slightly, that people are giving out advice and they're not necessarily qualified or experienced to do so. But actually I feel like at one point I should have been doing 3 or 4 workouts a day because what the world is telling me and what everybody else was doing. And mentally that's quite draining. And like you say, sometimes it's okay to just sit there and not do anything all day, or just read a book and focus on smaller things that aren't to do with exercise, like How do you help people cope with that side of things?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's giving yourself that permission to be flexible about it, to say, okay, some days I'm really not going to feel like it, and that is okay.
Yeah.
And then, you can pause, you can take a break from it, and then you might find that, oh, actually, I'm really ready to go now, and then go with your energies. But yeah, absolutely, avoid that trap of social comparison. What's right for one person is not necessarily going to be for you, and you do not have to be doing all of this stuff that you're getting bombarded with. So pick and choose, but really, really start with thinking about what you want to get out of physical activity and why you want to do it and what your own personal motivation is, and stick to it.
Brilliant. And I think, Rebecca, you guys have worked on an amazing resource from Moving Medicine. And I think that some of the patient information in that is around not just like structured exercise. I think at the moment we are seeing a lot on social media around structured kind of circuit sessions, HIIT classes, all of this sort of stuff. But actually, like I know in your resource, there's a lot of stuff that you can do that's physical activity, that's day-to-day things in the house that actually do count towards that movement side of things.
Yeah, I think there's an awful lot of people can do. And like I've got older patients at the moment, and some of them are in that group of kind of having to self-isolate and shield. And if they can get into their garden and enjoy that when the weather's a little bit better, something that they can see the changes there, that all counts too. I really think I like Tom's point about doing exercises with a small group, because even like older patients, sometimes it's, I've personally found it really hard to do the home-based exercises unless I hook a friend into it and we do like an hour of Pilates or something, and then it goes super fast. But yeah, I think mixing in those gentle exercises that you can do around the house. And again, one of my patients has had a great time spring cleaning. That's not for everybody, but it's still movement. It still counts.
I think my husband Lewis is hoping that I do that, but it hasn't quite happened just yet. I've not been free enough yet to get the cleaning done. But I think, like you say, both Rebecca and Ainsley and Tom and Lucy, I think there's an element around pacing as well. I think that there's a risk of everybody going all out and doing loads of things that they've perhaps never done before. So actually the advice around pacing from a cancer rehabilitation point of view will have always been the same in terms of maintaining when you're going through treatment, but also building very gradually. So I guess, how does that work during this period of time? I open it up to you guys to answer that.
Tom, you're probably the best.
Yeah, Tom.
Yeah. Sorry. I think you've probably just got to sort of assess what your current physical level of what your current physical activity level is, and your current fitness levels, and just sort of try and continue at that level as best you can. Like, what you would obviously don't want to do is go, as you were saying, Gemma, is get sort of caught up in this whole sort of whirlwind and storm on social media of everyone doing every exercise. Yeah. And I think everyone's quick to sort of promote on Instagram, etc., quite how many workouts they're doing a day now. They've got all this time and all of that, and it's not to get sort of caught up in that and get carried along with it and end up doing maybe double the activity that you were doing previously. Because we know, and as we sort of briefly touched on earlier about immune function, if we go from if you're doubling your workload, essentially, then that would be maybe moving from being a moderate level of exercise to going more towards the extreme level for that person. Obviously that's all relative. So it's really to just try and continue, I think, with whatever level you were doing previously. Try and keep going with it. And that's really difficult to judge, because as I think Lucy was saying, you go from maybe, say you're walking 10,000 steps in a day before. Well, I know for one, my step count is definitely down, but I'm trying to make it up in other ways. So that's difficult to sometimes equate. For example, I'm cycling, so I've got a bike at home. So I'm cycling a lot more than I am doing walking for my cardiovascular exercise. And that's difficult to say, well, that amount of steps corresponds to this on the bike. But I think you've just then got to work out, how do I feel? Am I feeling fatigued? In which case, pulling together now really what Ainsley was saying as well, if you start to feel fatigued, then, have a day off, and that's completely fine and completely normal to have a rest day in there. And this, the structure is probably going to change a bit from what you may be used to doing. But the key is always just a little bit and often with exercise and activity.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I guess now is probably for people with cancer, now is probably a time perhaps when communities like 5K Your Way and all the other charity communities can be really helpful, because I imagine there might be a bit of resentment to see everyone moaning about how crap their lives are because they're only allowed to go out for walks or whatever once a day. Actually, for so many people, it's much tougher than that. And, you know, just going back to the motivation, sharing how you're feeling with people who get it might be really helpful, and who understand that, you know, it's hard for everybody, but it's a whole lot more hard if you're having cancer treatment, or your cancer treatment's on hold, or whatever's going on in terms of your diagnosis. So sharing feeling, I always think a problem shared is a problem halved.
Yeah, and I think
definitely. Sorry, because I was going to say, sometimes if you can't find your motivation, somebody else can sometimes find it for you. They can bring that out. So that's why it's really important to connect with people. And particularly the 5K Your Way groups, they're going to be a really good source of that as well. So helping you think about why you got started in the first place and what that motivation looks like now in these times when things are slightly changed. And again, as Gemma said right at the start, it's about focusing on what you can do and what we can take from this situation.
Yeah, and I think these times are something that we're all, like I said before, very new to. None of us have experienced it before. And I think we will learn a lot about ourselves as we go along. We will also probably develop tools that we've learned from week 1 of lockdown when we're in week 3 that we can definitely use that, you know, will help us during that journey. So I think that, like you say, some self-awareness is also really important. And I think you'll learn stuff along as you go along, which will be really useful to look back on. Definitely. So thanks, guys. So I guess I think Tom mentioned it around some physical fatigue that people might be feeling, but this can actually be caused by psychological stress and anxiety. Because there's a lot of uncertainty going on. I know that when this all first kicked off, I was watching the news and listening and going on the news pages every single day. And I've had to limit that because it isn't good for your psychological health. You need to be aware of things, but you don't need to be obsessive over it because it can cause that stress and anxiety. So I think this question's, it can go to everyone, but specifically Ainslea and Lucy, because I know that Lucy's worked on a few projects around this from her professional triathlon days. But at the moment, like, what strategies can people use to help manage stress and anxiety?
So you go, Ainsley.
Go on. Okay. So in terms of like managing stress and anxiety, I think it's really important to think about where your energies and focus are going. So in particular, if you're noticing social media or following news streams a lot is having an effect on you, then start to question about, is that behavior helpful? What impact is it having on me? And actually, what behaviors and thoughts would be more helpful to me in this situation right now, and starting with that. So you mentioned about low energy, so it's really crucial to work out where your energy is going and mentally what's taking all of your energy, and perhaps taking some time out for reflection, or writing down your thoughts, speaking to somebody, just to really identify what's going on with you, and working out what the stresses are, and then starting to take some steps towards making things more manageable at the moment as well. And
Brilliant.
It's also recognizing that there's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of things that we can't control, but what we can control is our reactions. So it's often about taking time to check in what's going on with your head and your body in response to things, and just creating that space to think, what impact is this having on me? What action could I take to, try and help things?
Yeah, it's really, really great advice. Yeah, brilliant. Lucy, do you want to?
I was going to say, I guess, in some ways, anyone who's ever been told they've got cancer has to some ways got a mental advantage, because you've come through that conversation and you've developed this incredible resilience that people who've never been in an adverse situation perhaps have not developed until now. And obviously everything's out of our control. Something that I learned through my sports psychology was there's no point focusing on things you can't control. There's no point me thinking about a girl I was racing against and what she was doing. That was pointless. but I can focus on, as just as Ainsley said, what I can control, and there are things that I can do. So like you, I was looking at the news every day. I was completely obsessed. I couldn't concentrate on anything, and sitting down and working out what made my brain less active and less worrying, and what I could do to control my emotions, and control how I live my life and how I am living my life is really helpful. And the other thing I've done, and it sounds very cheesy, but it really works, is every day I try to think of something positive. Because, you know, doctors, we had a meeting today with all the doctors, and we're all, it's changing day by day. We don't know what's going to be happening in a week's time, in 2 weeks' time. It's really hard trying to plan how we can do our job. And we're by just talking about our emotions and the fact that we're all so out of our depth in everything that we, you know, normally is our bread and butter, is really helpful. But again, finding a little positive every day, I think is, for me, it really works.
Yeah, and I just want to share, that's really great to hear, guys. And I guess from my point of view, I have had a cancer diagnosis in 2012. And I said to my husband the other day, I think over the last 10 years and through some of the very difficult times I've gone through, has actually, the tools that I've gained has really, really helped me right now. In terms of like focusing on what I can control, like Lucy said, focus on the positive. So I did a gratitude diary, and I wasn't into that. I thought it was quite wishy-washy, like it really wasn't me. But I tell you what, the more you practice it, the more when times like this happen, you need it, and it really does help to lift you up. So I sat in the garden last week with a cup of tea and just wrote down, like, even listening to the birds, which, you know, that stuff is wishy-washy, but it makes a difference, because I was like appreciating the little things. But for me, when I was in 5 weeks isolation due to treatment, I made sure I focused on, like, had a routine, focused on what I could do, and just had those small plans and structures throughout the day. And I think I've used that in this situation, and I definitely feel a feeling of calmness, like I'm sleeping well at night. I'm able to get up every morning with the routine. And, you know, some days aren't like that, but if I keep coming back to those skills and tools that I've learned, it is really helping me right now. So just to share that from a personal perspective, really. So like you say, a cancer diagnosis can put things into perspective as well, Lucy. Like you said, you build that certain resilience that you need in certain periods of time.
And you might not even know that you have it, but when you look, I think you'll find it.
Yeah, definitely. So just for a series of times, we want to make sure that we've got answering the questions that people have asked as well. So Rebecca, this one's for you. And I think, so I read a fantastic article that you shared from Dr. Noel Pollock and Dr. John Rogers. And I know John personally, but they're both sport and exercise science consultants or medicine consultants. And this article was around COVID-19 guide for athletes. So we know we actually have a lot of our community who are pretty active on a daily basis, or perhaps are training for different sports. And these are people that actually also have cancer or living with beyond cancer. So can you just talk us through some of the key points? Because I think there was something mentioned, or it was mentioned in that article around, if I actually get COVID-19, how do I, if I've recovered, and once I've recovered, how do I actually get back into exercise, and what are the recommendations for this? So if you can touch on that, that'd be brilliant.
Yeah, for sure. The other person to mention who is really leading that is Dr. James Hull, who is a respiratory physician. But that's kind of important because he's, I guess, from the beginning sort of said, there is so much, again, like Lucy said, that we do not know. And I guess at the moment, I've got a little cohort in my athletic population who we're just kind of tracking. And every day it's like, especially, this is for mild illness, really. If anyone has more serious condition, then we're going to have to take people back a step. But I guess talking and focusing on the milder symptoms, and that usually means, well, that means people that haven't had to go to hospital, haven't had to have support with their breathing, but we're really taking this seriously. So like, I guess some people might be familiar with thinking about simple upper respiratory tract infections, like your typical cold, which is above the neck. And we usually say, okay, people can train through. This is not that. So we're definitely treating COVID-19 more as something that is like below the neck, more systemic. I found amongst some people, and this again is anecdotal, it's like case-based on each patient, but the fatigue seems to be overwhelming for people, like a lot of muscle pain, that kind of side of things. So that's in a way for trying to get people who are usually active to stop. that's kind of quite helpful. We don't want them to feel bad, but it does help put the reins on a little bit. You know, I'll have a conversation with somebody who's usually got an athletic routine and be like, this is going to be 2 weeks off. And they're oh, I don't know, a few days in, and they're buying it, which is, the bottom line seems to be that we want people to be totally resting for 10 days and hoping that symptoms have resolved by then. Little bit tricky because we think of things sometimes like a post-viral cough might be something that is not reflecting the state of the lungs. But when we look at some of the effects on the lungs, we know that it's quite significant. But I guess one thing we're also conscious of, there seems to be quite a strain on the heart muscle from this virus. So the current guidance is basically 10 days symptom-free, and then you add on 7 and keep resting. I'm working with colleagues to work out exactly what that means. I mean, I think this is where someone like Tom, exercise physiology, we want to be monitoring a bit, things like resting heart rate. If we let people do some really gentle stuff, remember all that good stretching that they've probably missed, especially if they've been laid up for a few days, it's going to be about gently getting back into aerobic activity. But I would really want to put a cap on and say that next week. So after they've finished having any symptoms, that whole next week, so we're then going up to about 3 weeks, is all about just capping it, just feeling good. And again, if anything doesn't feel right, is backing off of that. So it's going to be a bit slow. And again, I guess on the other side of that, talking about these populations who are having a regular exercise routine, whether they're super fit athletes, whether they're getting back into activity after cancer, now's not the time to push it. It's about having that baseline. But I would also kind of just not want people to have been pushing their activity before, because hopefully a lot of people won't get sick. But I think just having that good immune reserve is going to have been important too.
Brilliant, thanks, Rebecca. And in that article I read, and I already know, like I personally know the importance of this, but around sleep, vitamin D, vitamin C, how does that work with what's going on?
I guess we know that they're really good things. So again, we haven't got the huge amounts of science around things like vitamin C, vitamin D, but it appears to be good. Again, sleep's really helpful. I know some runners have wanted to go out for 2 hours, 2.5 hours. We haven't got the hard and fast evidence that it really suppresses the immune system. But given the context that it probably does, plus nobody's got a race coming up right now, I think it's just an edge off and, you know, getting the balance, making sure that maybe you do that bit of exercise, that hour or whatever it is that you normally do, but making sure there's that, again, like you said, really, Gemma, around having a routine, making sure you sleep, making sure we all log off the internet and get the good nutrition in, that kind of thing. So a lot around it. I guess if we've all got the time, except for maybe in terms of what we're doing work-wise, but like that bit more time to do self-care, then this is the time.
Yeah, and I think like it's not just, I think Rebecca's advice there is not just from an elite athlete perspective. I think there's a lot of recreational runners who see that, or in different sports, who see what they do is really important and they like training and they like that structure. But like you said, this advice is very crucial. So Rebecca, where can we follow that updated advice from you guys? Is it, because I know you post a lot on Twitter, which is really good and great to see.
But I think looking through those articles, so for example, that particular article that was Dr. John Rogers, Dr. Noel Pollock and Dr. James Hull was put out quite quickly, like on Athletics Weekly. So some of these forums will be putting them up. I'll try and work with colleagues and try and get that. I think we'll find that we know more. So again, I've said to a few athletes, patients recently, it's like, okay, this is what the guidance is. If in this, if this has turned out to be a cold, I'll be really miffed that I have to have 3 weeks off. And I'm kind of just trying to gently reply, but say, yes, but I don't want to undercall this, So I think we will keep learning. So as we keep learning, we'll try and get that out on those streams and keep people informed and updated. Brilliant.
And what we'll do after this is share those so our community know where to look and what to access as well. So brilliant. So I'm going to go to, and unless anyone has anything to add on that before I go to more questions from our community, because we've got about 3 or 4. Is everyone happy with that? Mm-hmm. Good. Everyone at home doing okay and still with us? Still got your cups of tea? I knew this wouldn't be 30 minutes, but we're going to carry on anyway. It's fine. So we've got a question from our community. So Robin has asked, so hi Robin, I know you're watching today as well. So it's great to see you on here. So to get, I mean, we've already covered this a little bit, but Tom, this is a good question for you. So to get fitter or build strength, most people recommend pushing yourself even harder, but over exercise may dampen the immune system. So exactly what Rebecca said. Or at the very least, it gives you DOMS, which is delayed onset of muscle soreness, that can make you hobble for a few days. So what is your suggestion for avoiding over exercise, or is there no such thing? So that's Robin's question.
Sure. So continuing really, I guess, from what I was saying earlier, of like trying to maintain the current levels of activity that you're doing, and go along with that, obviously building on what Rebecca said as well, sleep recovery is the other side of overtraining. So making sure that you've got plenty of sleep and good quality sleep, rest days built in so that you've got a good recovery schedule alongside your training schedule, and finding that balance is obviously critical to avoiding the overtraining. And then really you're looking in terms of developing strength and or building aerobic fitness. Then we're looking at something called progressive overload, which is really starting at your current levels of fitness and then just gradually with time as the body adapts. So as you get the physiological adaptations to the training that you're doing, and that starts to become more comfortable, then you can start to just push that level just slightly. And it needs to be, as it says in the title, is progressive. So if it's too much, then, and you test the body's physiological capabilities too much by the training that you're doing, that's when you can overtrain, you can break down. So it's a little bit, you adapt to it, that becomes your new norm, and your adaptations allow that to become your new norm. You recover, and then you train again. And over the course of several weeks or several months, that's what leads to improved fitness. It's that small little steps along the way rather than taking a big jump in between stages. Does that make sense, Gemma? Is that okay?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, so hopefully Robin's on here, so hopefully that answers your question. Definitely. I think we've covered quite a lot around that. So brilliant, guys. So the next question is from Nadine. So she sent that in and she said, recently started to do park runs, which is brilliant. She said, I can't wait for them to start again, and neither can we all. We can't wait for it all to get started, because that means 5K UA starts again. But she says, however, at the moment, I don't seem to be having any enthusiasm for running or continuing my couch to 5K, although I do go walking daily. So any tips? I guess that's from a motivational point of view, Ainsley, and perhaps Lucy to cover that question.
So my advice would be find some people to do it virtually with you, to join in. So you know that obviously we can't go out running with each other, but you can do that virtually. So I can go and do my 5K run, and my friend who lives in London can go and do her 5K run. And I wonder whether that might be something that could help.
And actually, do you know what I've done before? This was before all of this. I had my phone with me while I was running, listening to some music, and my friend called me. First time ever I've answered the phone to her, and I carried on my run while speaking to my friend. And and actually it was just like having my friend next to me, and I've never done it before, but the run went really quickly. I managed to have great gossip and
people on the indoor bike trainer, and I've had phone conversations, and we've arranged to meet in this virtual world at 4 o'clock and do a ride together. And I've also met people for my run and done exactly that, and just arranged, right, should we run at 4 o'clock? And we've done our own runs, but we run chatting together.
Yeah, so actually it doesn't have to be do it and then get back and connect. It can be connect during, as long as you're safe and wherever you're running safe with your earphones in. But definitely. Has anyone else got any tips around that?
Yeah, and if you're talking to someone, then that keeps it in that kind of more comfortable zone. You're not flashing yourself like Tom was saying and Rebecca was saying that you've got to avoid. By talking to someone, you're keeping it in a nice, even, gentle pace, as well as getting all those social benefits as well. So, yeah, I'd say go with your couch to 5K training. Try and get somebody involved, maybe on the headphones that you can talk to at the same time. And then you could join in on the 5K UA virtual events as well, so that you're getting that part run experience on your own. Probably even do it indoors if you like. So yeah, get creative around it and keep some motivation ticking over then. And it's important to know that, you know, we are going to have Parkland back soon, one day. This is temporary, and it's pretty natural for us to all have dips in motivation. You know, we're dealing with completely different times, and that's okay, you know, but any movement that we can do and keep going, then, you know, really cheer yourself on for it, and it all adds up, and you'll get there as well. But also throw in some other goals, a bit more immediate, that you can be working on in the meantime, and that helps to keep you really motivated. So set a little goal for that week, something that that's feasible for you to achieve. Once you've done that, you get a great feeling from it. You can share it with that goal with friends as well, so that they're getting in on the act too, and just build it up from there.
Yeah, brilliant. That's really great advice. So hopefully, Nadine, that's really helped you if you're listening, or if you listen back to this, that's great. So we've actually had one that I think is directed at you, Lucy, in terms of, it's a bit more triathlon focused. So Phil sent it in this morning. So he says, I'm a 63-year-old guy. I've done some sprint tries, and last year I did Ironman Wales, which I know is one of your favourite Ironmans, isn't it? So he says, I tore my Achilles in the lead up, so trained by shuffling his run. I'd like to get running speed over 5k back up, but how do I go about turning my Ironman shuffle into a reasonable 5k time? Can you help? That's a long-winded question.
So I think to get quick, you need to run shorter and run faster. So we'd be talking about doing intervals, so short sections of much faster running than you would be running for your Ironman. That's, again, probably now is not the best time to be focusing on trying to get really quick at something. It's probably best to wait until this pandemic's kind of settled and we're less likely to get infected. But once that's over, then I would say the best way to get quick at running is join a running club. You'll be pushed much more. But I think for the time being, as we've said all around, focus on exercising for health rather than exercising to get there. I guess something you could do really productively at the moment, and something that I would encourage anyone who wants to do as much as they can to get out of this lockdown as fit as possible, is work on strength. And there are some really good online strength sessions that you can do, but the stronger you get, and you can do that so easily in the living room with no equipment, just using your body weight, single leg stuff and things, that will really pay dividends when you start running again. And particularly if you've got Achilles injuries, they tend to, I think, relate to weaknesses somewhere along your chain. So the more focused strength stuff that you do, I'm not talking about, you know, big gym stuff, I'm talking about single leg stuff that you can do in your living room, that would probably be the most productive way that you could spend your time at the minute.
Fab. So I think with that, we're nearly into pretty much an hour. When I said when we first decided this, I was like 30-minute max. That's all we're doing. And now I'm like, how have we been here for an hour? But I think that, I mean, I massively recognise this is a fantastic panel, and I actually think that we potentially, if everybody agrees, do another one of these. Because what I was just going to say is, if anybody, I think we will run over too much if we can look at some questions from our Facebook. Anyone who's on Facebook Live right now, if you want to shoot across a question, and then if we run out of time, we can answer them another time, maybe on another question and answer, if everybody agrees. But so any questions, pop them in the chat box, and we will be writing them down to look at another point in time. So pop your questions in there. But before we actually finish, I just want to ask you guys, what have you been doing exercising in isolation? So Tom, kick us off.
So I've actually bought an exercise bike that's got a desk on it attached to it. So I've been. Where'd you
get that from?
I think it's from Amazon, but I think it got shipped all the way from China just in time. So I've got an exercise bike with a desk attached to it. So I'm working from home, obviously, as everyone is, and also typing and cycling. So
do you do that all day then? Do you sit there all day and cycle while you type?
No, not all day, not all day. But I'm doing a good distance. So
that's an Ironman, Tom.
So, definitely, I'm keen.
I definitely think we need it. We need a video of it.
I'll have to. I've got it around the corner, but maybe I can bring it out. Maybe I'll finish the interview on that, and then just strength in the actually in my bedroom. So I've got a small little space, no bigger than probably, I don't know, 4 meters. No, not even 4 meters. Probably 2.5 meters or so by about 1 meter, and just enough room to get a mat down and do several exercises. So really, just what we were saying, just a very compact sort of home-based strength session.
There you go.
So
only need 1 meter in a bedroom, sorted.
That's it.
Yeah.
Fab. So Rebecca, what are you doing?
Probably less than normal, and I guess that's because like I run a lot and just doing it to enjoy it and trying to do it to enjoy it and just be like kind of getting outside. I think my favorite things about the home-based exercise, I haven't managed to get any weights or anything like that either, but I have definitely struggled to do it on my own. But like setting up, I've got a couple of friends who work in gyms, and also a friend who's like a personal trainer, and doing a couple one-to-one sessions where we just catch up and then get a session in, and that has really helped. I do need to utilize my pretty small flat better for exercise, but yeah, hooking up with people, and I might take the virtual run partner out there too.
I want to join those. That was my finger. Can I join?
Yes, please. Yeah.
So, Brill, Lucy?
For me, it's actually, I think it's a blessing in disguise, because anyone who knows me from triathlon knows that I've struggled to retire, and this is kind of forcing me to become a little bit more normal in my exercise habits. But the best bit for me is the commute into work, which is normally miserable on my bike, loads of traffic, is now bliss, because you're just whizzing through the centre of Nottingham. So that's definitely a highlight. And one thing I have noticed, I think, and I'm a big fan of Chris Evans, and he was talking about it this morning, but and I thought of it already. It does seem that people are enjoying, people who've never exercised and have had all their lives to exercise. Suddenly, when you're told you can only exercise once a day, suddenly they're taking that opportunity. And I get the sense that when people are outside, and I know that so many people with cancer don't have that privilege at the moment, but I do get the impression that everyone's appreciating the small things in life a little bit more, and I hope that's going to be a massive positive when we come out of this.
Yeah, definitely. I think my street have all become joggers, because I definitely have never seen anybody jogging.
I know, that's the way
this.
to do it. Tell people they can't exercise and they're off. Yeah.
It's your token that you need to use, and people panic when they don't use it. So Ainsley, what have you been doing, just to finish?
What have I been doing? Right. So prior to this, my daughter had just started athletics lessons. She's 2. It's the cutest thing ever. Oh. So I've just picked up a little athletics vest. I don't know if you can see it. It's so sweet. I know. So yeah, mini athletics. And so what I did was I went and bought the some of the kit that she uses. So like a little speed ladder that they use in football, so that we do drills. And we've got a little foam javelin. And also what I bought out that I used in my pregnancy, and when I've been struggling with injury quite a bit, is one of those mini trampolines. And they're really good because they're low impact, they're safer on your joints, and I can do like mini little sprints on that as well, and get the sort of jumping exercises. So we've been doing a lot of garden stuff, and that works out really well, because then she's shattered after that morning session. We do something a bit more chilled, like arts and crafts in the afternoon. So I suppose that's what I've been doing. Definitely, I've been doing mini athletics.
That's amazing. I don't.
The toilet roll challenge.
We need to do this. We will. It's on my guilt list. You say you have all this time, and then there's still things that you're like, I do need to do this because it does look fun. But yeah.
Real. So I'll just finish off with what I've been doing in lockdown. So all I've been doing is trying to beat Lucy's time on this toilet roll challenge. That's all I've been doing. It will happen if I keep falling down the stairs. So it hasn't happened just yet, and I've not got the accuracy in the throwing just yet, but it will come, don't worry. Yeah.
I think Serena could do that.
Brilliant. So I think it's time to wrap up there. So I just want to say a big thank you to every single person who's joined in. We'll give you a virtual high five and listen to us on Facebook Live. I think to say we've all really enjoyed this. So I want to say thank you to our expert panel, Tom, Lucy, Rebecca and Ainsley. And hopefully we might get another one of these out soon. We definitely have a home workout from Tom coming as requested. So yeah, thank you to everybody who's watched, who's been involved, who sent their question in, and thank you to you guys as our expert panel as well. So have a great day.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, that was really fun. Thanks very much.
Have a great day. Keep smiling, keep active, and keep connected with us, guys.